Kurt Liske. I work for the Waste Commission of Scott County, and today you guys are at the Scott Area Recycling Center, where we sort all of the recyclables that come from all the households and businesses in Scott County and even beyond. In fact, Recycling Center, we don't recycle. What we do is a step in the process, the recycling process that's often overlooked, and that is organizing. And that's, again, what we do. We're a giant sorting facility. We basically take this big mixed up mess and we make sense of it. But it's also critical, because imagine being a paper recycler. What are you going to do if somebody brings you a bunch of glass? You can't make, recycled paper out of glass. Number one there on the schematic, but the first step is our metering bin. And basically it's a giant hopper with a conveyor belt in the bottom of it. So what happens is trucks come in from our scale. We weigh every truckload that comes in, and when the trucks come in, they go across our scale, and it works just like the scale in your bathroom or when you go to the doctor's office, except ours is big enough you can fit a semi on it. And those trucks go back to our tipping floor, and on that tipping floor we have just a giant pile. They tip everything out, and then that's when we take over. That's when our guys basically go to work. So we have our loader operator is in a big Caterpillar bucket loader, and he's grabbing scoops of those mixed up recyclables, and it's a big mix. Everything, there's no organization to it. He's grabbing bucket loads of that and dropping it into that big hopper, that metering bin, and then basically that conveyor belt starts moving it through our facility. That conveyor hauls it up. It goes under a big wheel, which I don't know if you guys can really see it, but it kind of looks like the big Price is Right wheel. But basically it smooths everything out. When he drops stuff in by the bucket load, it has a tendency to kind of stay in piles. So that wheel just basically smooths everything out. So that's number two there. The material goes up, takes a left turn, drops onto a conveyor for number three, which is our pre-sort line. And that's where we have our first human sorters take place, or human sorting operation take place. And what those sorters are doing is they're pulling out what I personally just consider like our problem items. And what those are big pieces of scrap metal, just regular garbage, things that just truly are obviously don't belong. Rigid plastics, so that's things like 5-gallon buckets, kitty litter buckets. We see like laundry hampers, like Rubbermaid totes, things like that. And then the last one is for shredded paper. Now all of that stuff, except for the actual garbage, does get recycled, but for various reasons, it's those other materials, the scrap metal, rigid plastic, shredded paper, they present different challenges for us. They're hard on the equipment, they're messy, things like that. So we want to pull those out as early in the process as possible. All that material gets dropped down those chutes into those bunkers, and then basically everything is organized in there, and we can separate out the scrap metal from the rigid plastic and so on. Number four on our little schematic there is our cardboard screen. And this is a way that we can, again, increase our efficiency, and that is by using a machine to separate out all the cardboard. And what happens is inside of there are a series of rotating axles that spin around really fast, and they're spaced really far apart, about 1.5 feet between each one of them. And on each of those axles is a big oval-shaped disc. And what happens is all the stuff, minus those problem items, comes in and gets dropped into that red box. Inside of it is all those axles and discs, and underneath that red box is another conveyor. Well, all the small material, your pop cans, water bottles, milk jugs, paper, that sort of stuff, can fit between those discs and axles, but cardboard, because it's big and flat and rigid, can't make it down in there. So it's a way that we can basically use that machine to separate the cardboard from all of the other material. We call it a screen, just like a screen lets the air into your house but keeps the bugs out because they can't fit between those little gaps. The rest of the material falls onto the conveyor and keeps going, goes on to number 5 on the schematic there, kind of in that top center. That little silver rectangle you see is our glass breaker. If anybody has ever broken a glass, broken glass is dangerous. It can cut you very easily, and the last thing we want is for our sorters to have to deal with broken glass, because we'd probably be sending a half dozen people to the ER every day for stitches. So we have a machine that literally breaks the glass for us, which seems kind of counterintuitive at first. You don't want broken glass, but we can use that glass breaker to separate it out when it's broken. And it works just like that cardboard screen. Cardboard screen has big discs that are spaced really far apart. This works the same way, but just in reverse. This has a bunch of little discs that are spaced really closely together. And the only thing that can fall through that screen is the tiny little shards of glass. So as your pickle jar comes in and gets bounced along there, it goes from being a nice solid pickle jar to a bunch of little shards of glass. The rest of the glass falls through onto a funnel, rides a conveyor belt straight down to kind of that bottom center part of the facility, and rides basically out to a pile outside. And we have basically a big pile of broken glass, and then we will actually load that into semis, and then it goes and gets recycled, turned into fiberglass insulation, so the stuff that keeps our house cool in the summer and warm in the winter. The rest of the material then continues on to number 6, which is another screen, and it's called a 2D 3D screen, so 2-dimensional, 3-dimensional. And what it does is it separates out 2-dimensional objects, in theory, and from 3-dimensional objects. When I say in theory, 2-dimensional being like your sheet of paper. So what happens is the material rides that conveyor up and it gets dropped halfway up that big red box there under the number 6. And that screen, that box, sits at about a 45-degree angle. Inside of there are a bunch of oblong-shaped discs, and the paper will actually ride those discs up to the top and fall off. The crazy thing is just by taking that screen and putting it at an angle, your 3-dimensional objects, so all of your containers, the little cardboard boxes that might have been able to fit through that cardboard screen, go in there. And because they're 3-dimensional, they actually tumble and roll and fall to the bottom. So all of the paper goes up to the top, basically right where that number 6 is, and then it falls onto that conveyor there where you see the number 8. We're going to circle back though and talk about containers for just a second. All the containers tumble and roll to the bottom, falls on basically through another funnel onto a series of conveyors that wrap up and around. So that number 6, you can see there's a couple conveyors just immediately to the right where it bends back around to the right, comes down, and then goes to that number 7. And that goes to our optical sorter. And our optical sorter, that optical sorter runs super fast. All the cardboard, little pieces of cardboard and different containers drop onto that belt, and that belt runs over 500 feet a minute. It's really fast, and it sweeps along, and it goes under that white box just beneath the number 7 there. And what that does is inside of that white box is basically like a camera, or they call it an eye. And it will scan every single piece of material that goes by, literally in a fraction of a second, and it can tell the difference in different types of plastic. It can easily tell the difference between any paper products or cardboard paper, that sort of thing. So not only does it identify it, even by the different types of plastic, it now identifies it, and then about 18 inches or so further on down the line, there is a series of air hoses that span the width of that belt. It's about 5 feet wide, and there's air hoses spaced about every inch. There's a set above the belt, there's a set below the belt. And that belt runs so fast that even if we did nothing else, all the material would just kind of go flying off the end of it. It wouldn't just fall off, it'd kind of go shooting off the end of the belt. So if we do nothing else, it just kind of shoots the material off that belt because it's running so fast. But that eye, when it senses, hey, here's a number 1 plastic bottle. Number 1 plastic bottles are your water bottles, pop bottles. It will take that and it will shoot the air out of the hoses and shoot it up. And it even knows, hey, don't shoot all of these, only shoot these 4 air hoses, numbers 7, 8, and 9. And it will shoot that number 1 plastic bottle up. And at the same time, a little bit further, say to the left, it might sense, hey, here's a small cardboard Amazon box. It's going to take air hoses 20, 21, and 22 that sit above the belt and shoot that straight down. So you have material literally either going straight off the belt, going down, going up, and it's happening at a rate of 500 feet a minute, and stuff, is literally flying everywhere. So that's how we sort all the containers. We'll pick up containers again here in a second. We're going to skip down from number 7, that optical sorter. We're going to talk about paper just for a second, and that is our number 8 on the line there, and that is our fiber line. And we get more paper than anything else. About 2/3 of what we get on any given day is some form of paper, whether it's newspaper, office paper, school paper, magazines, that sort of thing. Number 9 is our residue line. I'm actually going to put you on pause on number 9 for a second, and we'll circle back to that. Numerically, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to have that there, but you just have to bear with me. Number 10 is, you can see there's kind of those series of like rectangles on the upper left edge of our schematic there. those are what we call our silos, and that's basically all the paper goes into a big pile on the floor there. All of our containers go into those silos, and each one of those rectangles is a silo. Each silo is for a specific material. But yeah, so all of our containers get organized and then they get dropped into those silos. When those silos get full, they get emptied up, and then we bale them up just like we bale paper. We'll talk about bales in a second. Number 11 is our container line. So that's for anything basically that's not a number 1 plastic. It's hand sorted. Number 12 there is kind of looks like a yellow box. Inside of there is a giant electromagnet, and it's pretty cool. If you look inside of there, you'll see all the other material, the rest of the containers and little bits of residue or other bits of garbage that have snuck through basically are going through there. But you'll also see aluminum cans and metal cans. So like steel cans for whether it's a can of peaches or corn or green beans, you name it, Chef Boyardee. But what happens is they pass underneath that metal magnet, and any of that ferrous metal, that steel that is attracted to a magnet, basically goes flying up through the air because it passes through that magnetic field, and then it gets put onto a belt that sits between the magnet and the conveyor, and it sweeps that off. So it's pretty cool. You have stuff just kind of magically go flying up through the air. And then the last one is, from a sorting standpoint, is that number 13 station. And that's the Javelin is the brand name, I guess. But technically it's called an eddy current. And there's a short little conveyor that's about 6 or 7 feet long. On the rear axle of it is an electromagnet. But this one is tuned so if you've ever taken 2 magnets, you stick 2 of them together and they're attracted to each other. But if you flip one of them around and try and push them together, they push each other away, they repel each other. So that way when aluminum hits that magnetic field, it's like those 2 magnets repelling each other. So what happens is all the little bits of debris just fall off the end of that belt, and then they go out basically to our giant trash compactor. But all of your aluminum, which is usually like pop and beer cans, but we also, a lot of like your cat food containers are aluminum. So we see a lot of those, or aluminum pie tins, things like that. They hit that magnetic field and they go flying through the air. And I really think it's kind of funny. Whoever named it, calling it the Javelin is just perfect in my opinion, because it's like it's just throwing that aluminum. So that gets thrown to basically kind of a big catch or a funnel. It drops down. It goes over to number 14, which is a quality control station where we have one of our guys that literally just separates out like the beverage containers from like the cat food containers. Now we've got everything sorted out. So we've got all the cardboard in a pile, we've got a giant pile of glass, we've got paper piles, we've got all the different containers, but it's all loose. And it's a big pain in the neck to manage loose stuff. So what we do is we actually bale it all up, just like a farmer would bale up straw or hay. When we've got that bunker full of paper, we will actually take kind of like a snowplow. We will grab a bale and actually use it like a snowplow, and we'll push with our forklift all of that paper onto a conveyor. That conveyor feeds into that baler. That baler is a huge hydraulic ram basically, and it smashes everything down, packs it under about 300,000 pounds of pressure, and then once it's got maximum compaction reach, it kicks out a bale, and that bale is probably, it's about 4 to 5 feet wide, about 3 feet tall, and about 3 feet deep. And they weigh on average about 1,400 pounds, 1,400 pounds. We make one of those bales on average between every 5 to 7 minutes. All the bales then are nice and organized, and that's what we do. That's our finished product. We are part of the recycling process, but what we're doing is prepping the material to be recycled. Once we have enough for a semi-load, we actually list that for sale, and there's basically cardboard recyclers. There's multiple of them. They will actually bid on that, and whoever wants to pay us the most, we say, great, okay, here's a contract, send your truck over, pick it up, we'll load it up, and then they take it and they make it into new cardboard products or new plastic products or new glass products or so on through all the different materials that we take. But yeah, that's our facility in a nutshell.
What are some items that you don't like seeing?
Oh man, we see all kinds of weird stuff. Man, we've had mannequins come through, or like the plastic cutouts that you see at like the movie theater. Sometimes they're plastic, sometimes they're cardboard. We see a lot of like propane tanks because they're metal, and people think, hey, this is metal, but it's also got pressurized flammable propane gas in it. Like, that's kind of scary. So things like that. Believe it or not, batteries are a huge thing that really freak us out because batteries are in everything now. Cell phones, tablets, let alone just any other little electronic device. But especially rechargeable batteries, if they get damaged, they have a tendency to burst into flames. And when you get as much stuff as we get every single day, you have this big mountain of paper and cardboard and everything else, something that might burst into flames is something that, like I said, kind of freaks you out, and it definitely does for us.
So, being a librarian,
Yeah.
what would happen if I put a hardcover book in the recycling bin?
Yeah, so it would go through, it would come to us, it would go through that whole thing, and it would be grabbed by one of our guys, and it would actually get recycled.